I asked Carolyn King when I seen her this morning if her ears were ringing yesterday about 11 o'clock a.m. She asked me why, and I said, well, I was really hammering it home of the years upon years of service that Carolyn and Margaret have worked for the nation and served the nation for so long. It was funny, I think it was 2 years ago in 2017, we were doing some events and we were part of some groups there in Toronto that was, and Canada was recognizing that it was their 150th year, their 150th birthday. And it was funny, and Carolyn and Margaret kept saying, well, if it's Canada's 150th year, I said, coming in May, that May it would have been 170 years that we were here, where we are right now in the community. So it was 170 years at that time that we were here on the credit where you are now. But yet Canada was still celebrating their 150. So we were here in this area 20 years before Canada was even established. And I get thinking of the work and the work that Carolyn does, and I always think, I was, like to recognize her for her timeless. I say timeless because we don't even really know how long she's been here, how many years. And I get thinking, if we were here 170 years ago, I'm thinking maybe her and Margaret organized the potluck at that time. I like Razin too. I like Razin the Chief too. So, okay. So like I said, it's my pleasure to introduce Carolyn King.
He says half an hour. Hey, we're going to beyond that. I think we got a bit of time with the video not being shown. Okay, Ani, Dejnikaz Carolyn, and as you're buying new credit. And I'll answer a few of those numbers that he said. You didn't know how long I was around. Well, I'll be 70 in April. So I've been around a while. Seen a lot, did a lot. And I've been at New Credit this year now for 51 years. Married Fred King, married from 4th line over to 1st line. You'd think I was in another country. So, New Credit, Mississaugas of the Credit, became my home. I married here, became my home, raised my children here, and worked for the community. So, way back, I was chief there for one term there. Didn't like that. I'm a worker and doer. When you become chief, you can't do stuff. They even took my computer away from me, so I'd sneak around the office and type up stuff. And at any rate, wouldn't go back and say, well, what would you not do that? I know it's part of the life that I've done, and I was asked to do, because I was pretty vocal being the elected chief, and that out there running around on a national scale, that I saw maybe what things that I thought we should be doing that wasn't being done across the country. So afterwards, I was asked to speak to the Conference Board of Canada like 3 times. They asked me what I thought the leadership of this country needed. And I wrote a speech for them. The title of my speech was, "You can't build the nation between 8:30 and 4:30. If we're nation building as First Nations, it's 24/7, 365, and it's generation after generation." So that's what we have to do. If we're going to have a name and a place and be a presence on this land, then we have to work. We need 100 Margarets and Carolyns to be out there working. And I say, when you're nation building, you don't get a coffee break. Do you think those people fighting out on the front lines for their cause sit around and have a coffee break? I don't think so. We have a cause. We have a urgent need to be recognized and to be respected in this country, and I want to educate the world. So when we talk about doing the Moccasin Identifier project, it came from a digital dot to what it is today, which is an educational and awareness stenciling program. And I'm pretty passionate about it. I go around and talk about it all the time now. It's part of my private life job. It's called Indian 101, who are the indigenous people of this country. And then now I add the Moccasin Identifier, which is a project, a special charge project of the First Nation. And I'm a consultant to implement it. And we need to recognize our supporters and sponsors, and that's the First Nation, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and we received funding from the Greenbelt Foundation, and previously received funding from Two Rivers Community Development Center, and we're just finishing that funding round to help develop it, implement it. What you see today, we've been set up in the booth in the boardroom there, and you see I call it the pizza box. I've got my stencils on there and stuff like that. Our next, this is probably the last time you're going to see that. We're going to go into marketing, and we're going to go into branding. So the world's going to change for our Moccasin Identifier. As I tell people, it's going to be prettier. So people say, teachers all say, we love the pizza box. The kids just love it. So the Moccasin Identifier was, when I say that it belongs to the First Nation, and I say that I'm the creator, so that's why I claim it. And that we were doing the presentation about the Moccasin Identifier at the gathering back 2011-12, and the research people, my history friends, I do a lot of history work in the province, and I was asked, if I went to that digital dot, we're all thinking technology is going to save the world, and I said, what if I went to that site? What am I going to see? And we're like, well, probably nothing. Paved over, dug up, you can see parking lots, schools, golf courses, probably nothing. Roads. So I said, well, you should have a plaque. You need to have a marker. Because what if I go to that site and never mind a smartphone, what if I don't even have a phone? So I said, okay, let's talk about it. So that was Friday, last day of the 3-day gathering. And so we sat down and talked about it. And they said, well, we got to come up with a symbol. I said, okay. And first of all, we thought the eagle feather. We said, no, eagle feather is too important to us, too sacred. So then I said, well, maybe our dotems. Like, no, same thing. Our dotems, our clan system symbols, are too sacred to us. And that we don't want them on the ground where people will walk over them and not know what they are. I said, just make us mad again. So they said, well, Carolyn, you have to come up with a symbol. We're meeting with the ministry next Friday. So by next Friday. So I went back to my office there at the old council house, and I cleaned off the whiteboard, and I wrote, what will identify us and connect us to the land? It shouldn't have taken me 3 days, but every day I went in and I read that thing and I said, what is it? On the 3rd day, I said, it's our footwear. And the idea was born. So that's why I claim it. I claim the Moccasin Identifier concept. And it has been received 200% for what it is going into the school. Last year we did about 800 kids, 800 schools, 800 children in classrooms, from full school to classrooms. And that's so. We did 18 days of the CNE last year with the MAC, Major Events Committee here. We stenciled hundreds of Moccasin Identifiers on paper. And we've done a lot of different ones around the country. So just want to give you a brief on this. We've been doing a lot of work with a lot of different people, groups. We want to partner with the parks. They're already on. They were at a meeting I was at yesterday, the Ontario Place meeting. And so we're going out and talking about the project. And what I have been basing it on, treaty. This is our treaty land, and we should start to see ourselves on this land. And the other is that inclusion. It's about time that the municipalities, this country, this continent, starts to recognize the original people. We have been so covered over and disrespected, left behind, that I envision a new future. And I truly believe that the Moccasin Identifier can help change our future. And that we're not going around pounding anybody on the head and demanding that they do it. We're offering them the opportunity to learn and to be engaged. So that's what the Moccasin Identifier is about. So we've been successful, and we haven't marketed this project. We just get word of mouth. We go to the next school, next organization. Different ones do that. And so what you'll see in here at the end, well, maybe I'll just wait till we get to the stencil. So there's a little thing that I want to talk about. We have this project. We do our annual powwow every year, and that we're building an arbor. So we started out with the idea to build a new arbor, and it's still not done. You can design it, but you can't always build it. That's what happened to us. Headline last year, I think on Two Road Times, was "Powwow continues, arbor incomplete." So I met with the university last November, and we're going to go forward to finish it and look at how we're going. It's just the relationship. Like, we didn't understand how to deal with the university and the semesters and the school and all the program lessons learned now. And so we'll get it done for next year. But later on, at the end, I'll read a article that was done about it. And this here talks about inclusion, and it talks about what our designs mean to us and how it's going to help us move forward. And my moccasins and the arbor, they talk about this. We'll do that near the end. Okay, we could start. Go on. If we as First Nations people do not get a marker on the ground today, we will be lost forever. And how will they ever know about us? How will they recognize whose land they're on? How will they know us as we live today? Sites that are significant to us, the Indian reserves, like you're on the New Credit Indian Reserve, federal lands set apart for the sole use and benefit of that prospective First Nation. Our ancestral villages, where we once lived. You heard Bonnie talk about the villages at the credit, but villages all over. The mouth of the Don. There's all kinds of sites that are ours. And within the Moccasin Identifier project, we're researching those sites and where we might get our recognition done with an activity, with a plaque, recognition by the municipality. Burial grounds, our ancestral sites and areas, our sacred sites where there's gatherings or spiritual places where we might gather. And a lot of that is like, condolences to Josephine Mondeman and her family, who lost Josephine today, that she walked those water's edges, trying to bring awareness to the importance of water and what it means to the Indigenous people. We can't thank her enough for that. Our medicine sites, where we go and gather and get those things. At our table out there in the boardroom, we have some jams and jellies, and that was done by a member, Alice Mike. She walks around the different areas here, gathers up those berries and plants, and then she takes them home and makes them into a jelly that we can use. And people are doing other things. Teresa just gave me a gift here of the soaps and sweetgrass and different things that she's doing and making for us that are part of our sacred medicines. They're everybody's, but they do mean extra things to us with our 4 gifts like that we have at the front door there. So, there are things that we live on that we've lost or got separated from to to use, which may be better for us. And we can't thank Rudy and Margaret Ann there for, bringing that education to us for the last many years, telling our kids about what in the ground, those plants and those trees and what they were used for and what they still can be used for. And that we get away from all this pharmaceutical medicine they say is good for us. So we got a lot of good stuff out there. We just need to be part of it and bring it up. Those significant sites are always along the trails. It was our highway. It was our sustenance, and it was our highways. Those hunting and fishing, gathering, harvesting sites, they're all still there. We just got to be a presence, help. We need help to make a presence there. And that, and we can't, like I say, thank people like Josephine who've done a lot of work to create awareness about the water. And that applies to the world. If we don't have water, we're not going to be here. I went on a little research trip up to Ottawa a couple weeks back and went to the Canadian History Museum and looked at their Moccasin collection. Got full access to the collection, 5 handlers. Anything I wanted to see, they brought out and we looked at it and talked about it and took pictures. And that, then I went over to the National Gallery. They were running the show Anthropocene, which is an amazing, impressive presentation, but very sad. It talks about all the impacts that people are having on the earth, the world, and exhibits about, garbage sites are as big as this community, and people live on top of them. You just go look at that site. There's a good documentary online. It was in Toronto. I didn't get there. But the way that they're carving up the land and to meet population growth is just terrifying. So there's some things that we need to think about, how all that is impacting us. And in that garbage dump, they showed 3 plastics that come from someplace in the world. The plastic, Sobeys, out of Newfoundland, the oil-rich people. And then I think the other one was Alberta, or Foodland, I think it was, or one of the grocery stores. And they pulled out a bag, and it said Armstrong birdseed, which is right down here, is being called it at Hagersville. So the plastic arrived even from our basically community, ends up in a huge mega landfill site in Malaysia. It's amazing. I'm not sure if we know what's happening with our garbage. So anyway, and impacting the waterways, impacting them. All that runoff, it doesn't stop, it just keeps going. So we got to think about that. Next, the promotion of the Moccasin Identifier sites, I kind of can't see it. We promoted the different sites where the marker could be placed on sites that have been plowed up, dug up, paved over, or built on. And that's what we see today. We don't see ourselves in the, sorry, maybe I should move over this way a bit so I can see. Further research, we're looking all the time at the archaeological evidence. There's lots of, anything that's been dug up for development, there's an archaeological report on that. So we're for the funding that we have for the Greenbelt, we're looking at our Greenbelt and our treaty lands, what we want to do. Sorry. Okay. Thanks, David.
Be careful you don't fall off.
Yeah, I don't want to be like Mayor McCallion. She fell off the stage one night when we were talking to her. I tell you, she fell off the stage. Heritage Mississauga, right? We were down there. She was getting her award and she was saying thank you, and she stepped forward and a good thing it was only like I think 18 inches or something like that, and she jumped right up. And she says, and she just keep on going. And everybody was saying, what? She goes, I'm a hockey player. You fall down, you get up. That was amazing, amazing. So we come up with the idea of a moccasin as a symbol to recognize their existence and the identity. And our, identity, more than one. So, you've seen this already about our move. We got a lot of places in this province to look at and identify, but our main focus is about in our treaty lands and territory. So there's lots of people in, you just think about that little green space filled up. And I got to make a political statement here. You know, the Ontario government is looking at doing all the one place to grow. And so part of my job here with working with Margaret Salt for 4 years, that we went and gave input on those reports, and that because we're federal land, the Ontario government does not research the impact on us. They do not forecast for us. So if we as First Nations people want to have our position put, we have to look at the impact of all of that development on our lands, or maybe just our reserves, but impact on our treaty lands. And that as we speak, they are studying the whole area here, and that the plan just goes around Six Nations and New Credit. We're just like a little white spot. And I said, if we don't get our act together, we're going to be like Central Park in New York City. You know, for the New Credit members, you just sit here and you watch and how many cars are going by. 15,000 cars a day go by that number 6 highway down there. And that for our reserve, we have 6,000 plus acres. Six Nations has 45, almost 50,000, you include Brantford. And that we're a green spot. We're a green place in all of this. And that if you look on the satellite maps, you see the weather every night. We're that little green area. And if we don't look to protect ourselves, we're going to be impacted. I think down the road, and I'm not sure what our children are going to get if we don't help address that, because it's happening. I can sit outside at night and the cars go by. I can hear the talk out of the intercoms out of Hagersville. The trucks go flying by, and that we're being impacted. And if we want to keep our natural space, our medicine sites, then we're going to be impacted. So we got to think about what position we're going to take. So as we keep working on strategic plans and environmental protection for us, we have to think about what's happening around us. So lots of stuff happening around us. Next. You seen that? These papers are all over. And so when I go out and talk, I take these maps with me too, to talk about, we start with treaty. And that I talk about why there's a treaty. Part of my Indian 101, I started way back in 2000, and that talking to, as the partnership business development person, I was tasked with promoting the First Nations, Six Nations and New Credit. And so I had to keep telling them about, even though we're federal lands, we have people who live here who want to do business. So taking it out, and always on that teaching mode, to talk about why. There's a treaty, it's federal land, but we still do business here. So it's always a learning curve. Next. That's just a map that Margaret got put together on, because people wanted to know exactly where the line is. So she got that map put together. It would change today as we start to demand sort of more. I think we get fuzzy boundaries as opposed to real direct lines. On. Back to the implementing and developing the Moccasin Identifier. We linked up with friends, teachers, all of my historical friends. Like Catherine Watt was the first one that suggested a marker, and Jane Beecroft, who's our other longtime promoter and friend, that said they suggested that, and I told you what we did, and we come up with the idea. And so our next suggestion was, you need to go to the Batachou Museum in Toronto, which has the world's largest exhibit. It's the largest museum of its kind in the world, the Batachou. They have collections of, amazing collection of footwear and shoes from the entire world, with over half of it being indigenous. I say that there are a few things in this world that take my breath away and stop me from talking. And that you go down, we've been privileged 3 times now to be in the collections at the Batachou. You go 2 stories down, and they're the same size exhibit rooms. This one is the indigenous collection. It's the circumpolar and North America. There's really only 2 Anishinaabe moccasins in there because they have all of them. And you see the ones that are, all these style stencils that you see, or drawings, which is Philip Cote. He's been our researcher. He took made the drawings of the moccasins, and he made the stencils. So he's key to this project that we've been working on. And the other collection room is the rest of the world. That's how much precedence she put on the Indigenous collection. And the late Sonia Bada, she just passed away last year, she did most of the buying and selecting. So she went around to the different places and bought them from people or from museums or wherever, and and all the research. They are our partner on this project, and that they give us full collection access to anything we want there. And that's and matter of fact, up in Ottawa, they give me full, whatever you want, whatever you need, Carolyn, you can come here. And that's so we got some of the best stuff out there to come and to make a good. When we ask people to take on this project, that we have a good base of it, and we need all the First Nations to come together and to help us approve the selection down the road. We got our core, but we want to do a lot more. So when I walked into that, going to the room for the first time, I went in there, and it took my breath away. I went, I couldn't believe it. I stopped. And this is leather, it's smoked, and it's somebody's footwear. It has a smell. It's just amazing. I mean, I can still smell it. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You see, from the Inuit, Tibet, Siberia, all of that collection for the circumpolar, and then all of North America. Amazing collection. And they're going to be doing some further ones. I don't know whether Catherine Hurley made it today. She's supposed to be coming. She's working at the BATA. And so we're working on a new project and going to go visit again hopefully next week. So we come up with those designs. So you need to know that they're all been researched. They've been curated. We have full access to the information that goes with it. So I think we're on a good base to go forward. We can move on. This here is the Huron. The Hurons, here's the way our plan looks there. You see those boards there? The Cree in the north, the Anishinaabe in the middle, Huron-Wendat's in the middle, and the Iroquois communities in the south. This is Iroquoian, because the Huron-Wendat's are Iroquoian. This is all natural. It's very dark. It is done with moose hair and porcupine quills and sinew. Of course, on leather. So, very unique. Pretty. Oh my goodness. So move on. This one here, you'll see in a later slide. This is the Anishinaabe moccasin, and the word Ojibwe means puckered seam, gathered up. Not few of the nations can say that their footwear will identify who they are. But I mean, if I was true to my footwear, I should have, the moccasin on with the center seam. And my other background, with the Mohawk one, I have to wear 2 different ones, I guess. And but you see, center seam, and that's the more decorated one. And that's got as soon as you start to see beads on moccasins, like the older versions, you know that it's post-contact. So you can tell the history too. You know that it's been influenced with things. So, next one. Turned into a stencil. Maybe flip back. See what it looks like as a drawing? Go forward. Here's what it is as a stencil. That's what we're taking to the schools and to organizations and to communities. And we're asking them, you can do this. You can teach your community, your whole municipality. We can teach the whole country about whose land they're on. And this little project has the potential to go across the country, and if I dream big enough, across the continent. And it all started at New Credit. The next one. People can do stuff. This is in Cambridge, where we got some municipal people sitting here, and that worked with the Moccasin Identifier and with Caitlin LaForme. So in June, they put up these banners along the Grand River, Cambridge, and so they take the Moccasin stencil, and then they took the tree of peace to represent the Haudenosaunee. So simple things. We start to be included in the landscape. People can do things without, a protest, without, pounding them on the head and saying that you have to do this. They want to do it. They said, we want to do that. Give us something. So that kind of thing starts to happen. And that's, next one. Let's go back one. I was doing some work. I worked at AI, and I think Larry was the Grand Chief at the time. And I had to write a speech for them. And so I'm writing it. We talk about getting our name on the ground and on the plaques, or like, where do people recognize us? And so we were up in, my assistant and I were up in Peterborough, and went and visited, Hiawatha and Alderville. We were going up there, and so I stayed in Peterborough at the hotel, and I'm writing the speech. I got to figure out what to write. It was pretty well done, and I had to figure out a title. And so we were going out to Hiawatha, and I was kind of lost. And I said, pardon my terminology, damn Indians, they never put a sign on the highway. I come over the hill, Hiawatha First Nation, that way. And I said, well, what do you know? There's a new sign on the highway. And became the title of that speech, eh? There's a new sign on the highway. When you have built capacity and you're doing things, you want people to know who you are and where you are. You're willing to put a sign on the highway. That's an economic indicator that we're here. And that's so. Just to say that municipalities can do things. We have signs on the highway here. Took a lot to get a sign on the number 6 highway to say new credit that way. And Barb Hill and I worked on that for a few years. So municipalities can start to play a part. Next. This is that Moccasin Identifier, stenciled, engraved into the walls of the new Ontario Place, which is up for threat right now under the new PC government. And that you see that we participated. I just did a speech for them last couple days ago, and that I put my speech down as more of an inclusion. The I was directed by council then to go to the meeting that they called for the Ontario Place, first kind of big public meeting, and so I went there, and Minister Chan for Ontario here, Minister of Culture, Tourism and Sports. And he did the whole spiel about how they were going to do all this good stuff and design at the Ontario Place. The new, it's called the Trillium Park with the William G. Davis Trail. So when they were done, Fred McGarry, who we were working with at the time at the University of Waterloo, when they were done, he said, any questions? So I had my vest on, and I was the first one to put up my hand. I said, if the province is going to do any new work on this land, you have to include us. That's duty to consult and accommodate. And I said, we're the Mississaugas of the credit, and we're here to help you do that. And he goes, okay. And we did. We participated. It took us 4 years of work. I was working for the band, and then it got taken up, the idea, and I just put that that project, a major project like that, felt like we were finally included, and that it was okay to put Indigenous design on this public park for the City of Toronto. And they did. What did we get there? We got the park, we got the engraving at the entrance, we got the fire pit. We can't go to Toronto and have a fire. It's against the rules. They have fire stuff, fire rules. Cities and fires don't go together. So we got the fire pit right along the water, we got the meandering trail, we got native plants, and we got the marker tree. I was telling a lady that. I said, we worked with them, we engaged, we participated, they come out here, we selected, the council gave them approval for that, for the designs that they were going to put in place. And my new PowerPoint says, it felt like inclusion, that we were part of the picture. So the Moccasin Identifier is on its way. And that, I was telling a lady that, and she said, gee, Carolyn, I think they built that park for you. And I said, I like that. I told him, it's my park now. It belongs to the Mississaugas. And that's Anishinaabe. All of our Mississauga relations here, we're all part of the same design. So the one thing that you need to say, the Moccasin Identifier is a two-part program. We have the core project, which is the school, and so you see that there's a box down there. I call it my pizza box. The stencil is taped on the bottom, and the kids from the reserve here, we went to Toronto and we painted the streets. Painted. We got in trouble because we painted on public property without permission. So Toronto was, now we're known as tag artists or graffiti. And that's so, and we go around and stencil a lot of different places with support and do our best to stay off of public property. And that, but it worked. We stenciled out there from Fleet Street into Fort York and then up to Bathurst. And that, but they caught us the next day when we were back in to do more, and they said, we have to talk to you about that Moccasin Identifier. So I'm saying this because municipalities, they need to be part of the picture to say, yes, you can paint on the property. So we're already in the official plan of Toronto. Many, many meetings to get us named in the official plan. So that day, the First Nation was hosting the gala for the Pan Am Games. And so Mayor John Tory was there, and so I stood in line, and I went and told him, I said, we stenciled the moccasins all the way on the street here. And he goes, that's a great idea. Great, that's good. And I said, well, you know what? Some of your people didn't think so. I got a talking to this morning about stenciling on public property. And he goes, what? Reaches into his pocket, pulls it out, and he says, Carolyn, you can stencil anywhere in my city. If you, yes, we got Toronto. So I tell my, when I'm talking to Toronto, I tell them, we can do it. We don't have to worry. We got the mayor's permission. And he said that if anybody gives you trouble, you tell them to call me. So we're on for Toronto, and it's in the official plan. So, and it's in for the municipalities, it's in the, for Toronto's official plan, it's in the realms and views and acknowledgement of heritage. So that's where they put it. The Moccasin Identifier is there. So we've been doing projects in Toronto with a lot of good friends to get a marker down. And it's working. It's happening step by step, moccasin by moccasin. And we can all do more. So that's we want to do all of it. The core project is for the schools. During the month of June, the classrooms of this province will go out and stencil the Moccasin Identifier, or no, they'll research whose land their school is built on, near, or what treaty area they're in. Then they'll take the pertinent stencil, and these 4 stencils, as I mentioned, will cover Ontario linguistically. The Cree in the north, the Anishinaabe in the middle, Huron-Wendat's in the middle, who live in Quebec now, but they're in the ground, and the Haudenosaunee, and we got a Seneca Moccasin on there. That's the game plan. Change our world. I said, I have a dream too, that this province is going to be covered with Moccasin Identifiers in the next decade, and they will forever know whose land they're on. And we're starting over with the kids. And like I said, we did about 800 kids last year, and they just love it. October 14th, we stenciled on Toronto Island. We use that as an example about what can happen. It's a family event, it's educational, and we just get all messy. Paint, come out, I'll paint every time. And that's so, I'm really confident that we're going to change the world. Next. There it is, a little bit closer picture. People look at that and they say, oh my goodness, what is that? And that's the question for the second part of the thing. I could give you a stencil, and you can go stencil it on your property in the city. And when somebody says, What's that? You get to tell our story. And we just keep on doing it. Change the world. Next. The First Nations are preparing implementation across the territory and plans to meet with the Ministry of Education to become a... I want this to be an approved project, that the teachers don't have to say, well, I'm not sure we can do this. So we didn't get a meeting with the last minister, so we'll see what this new minister is doing. We're suggesting sites where this symbol could be painted or put on more permanently. A lot of people want it permanent. Well, the one I forgot to mention, the paint we use is wash away, in that it's either tempera paint or the chalk spray paint, and then it'll go away, and we'll do it again next year, and just keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. That's the idea. Research from your own office, locations, give input on stories, write lesson plans for your area. That's a lot of work to get all of those things in place. Identify significant sites and areas. We got some more pictures. Next step. Down. I thought we had a couple more there. Okay. Jim McGretch. That's it. If I can do one more, can I say one more thing? I told you about building that arbor. That never got done last year. You know, the course at the University of Waterloo is design build. It's an elective, and so the third-year architectural students, they, work on projects, and they design it. Then they actually have to go out and build it. Well, this is one of those ones they failed at. You know, so they couldn't build it because it's what they call grid design, and it goes up and it bends. And fitting into the semester, they give 2 weeks to build it. And wood is wood. They had to steam it, bend it, steam it, bend it, steam it, bend it. Run out of time. End of the semester, no insurance coverage. International students, they left. So we have some people here, I think Bill is here, who we cobbled up and we made use of it, but we had to run the powwow underneath the tent last year. Like I said, we're going to go forward. But this, I had a summer student, Jenna Butler. I told her, I said, you document everything that's happening here, and at the powwow we'll have a nice little display and tell people what happened. And so, unfortunately, she got sick and she had to leave. But she left a note on the desk and said, Carolyn, review. And I kept saying, crap, I got to do that now. And so I didn't go look at it right away. And so when I did, about a week before the powwow, I read what she wrote, and I am totally impressed. And that I feel that her article about the arbor, which is just like a pavilion, a patio that you might have, but what does it mean to us when we're building our arbor and we're seeing our design in place, someplace, anywhere? And so she wrote this, so I want to credit Jenna for this story, but I really think it encapsulates the things that we're trying to do. In today's world, it's easy to get disconnected from our roots. As Anishinaabe people, we need to connect with each other so our values and beliefs may be carried on. Being Anishinaabe does not simply mean song, dance, images, language, or even blood. It's much more than that. It is the natural world we live, understanding that there is an unforeseen world and remembering that everything is living. When we start to explore protecting our identity and who we are as the people, it brings us back to our original purpose, being one with Mother Earth. So many people talk about it's all about the land. Back to my own place here. Protecting her and making sure that there are enough resources for our future generations. Through this, we are also protecting our ceremonies, our practices, respecting that every little thing has a purpose in this world. Being Indigenous is not a spectator sport. It is a lifestyle you live. So let's start working together to bring all of our knowledge into one place for learning, one place we can truly show this is who we are. We will not tell you how to be Indigenous. We can teach you to feel confident and to accept that as an Indigenous person, you have the spirit within you to make sure our ancestors are never forgotten and that our youth will always be remembered. I'll skip the part about the architecture. We're building a new site. We want to have other things in there, she noted. The sacred fires, 4 directions, medicine gardens, spaces for our craft and vendors, entertainment stage for events, seating all around, a cultural village with traditional-looking, traditional-styled structures. The purpose of this project has many aspects. It would not only continue to provide us with the resources that we would use for our cultural practices, but it would also create opportunities to understand what we as Anishinaabe people would require to be a thriving First Nation. Although there are many unique First Nations, we're all striving for the same purpose, to live freely and to live freely and respectfully in today's modern society. Through this project, we as Anishinaabe people need to recreate spaces to reflect our origins, our culture, and existence. Everything is connected, and we want to start putting those words into action to learn how to listen to all living things. 18-year-old Jenna Butler. If an 18-year-old can say this, I think we've got a future. Thank you, Jenna.